hey, how you doing? I didn't see you there. Right. So hey, long time no see. It's me, Doc Normal, and I'm set up here to talk about music. Today, we're gonna get our tiki on. We're gonna talk about an album that I released 2 years ago. First, before we start, we want to get into the mood. I'm not using this, but I have recently just received this gift from a friend, a new tiki drink mug, and if you notice, that's Chewbacca from Star Wars, right? Nerdy and cocktail vibes. So I'm just going to set this aside. This is one of those, I think, Tiki Farm mugs, and I picked this one especially because it is a drummer, and this was a gift. Yeah, it was a nice one. So look, we're talking today in July of 2022. I released this CD album called Cool Cocktail Vibes. That's right. On all the streaming platforms and on Bandcamp, and as you see, in a nice physical CD form because we're old school. And we even had some very, very limited cassettes. We sold a few of these. People like cassettes again. So we've got a few of those cassettes. It's only a few in supply. So just shipped one out recently. Cool Cocktail Vibes was a project I did with John Borroz, a good friend of mine, guitarist, known for blues, rockabilly, country, jazz. I met him when I was very young, like I was 19 years old, and started playing with him. He had a lot of different people in his band. Billy Rancher, Lenny Rancher, the Rancher Brothers, who went on, did some things before the untimely death of Billy. Also, Dwayne Jarvis, who became, I think, a Nashville musician later. You know, all guys who were like teenagers when they met John. It is the follow-up of a blues album that we did. We'd worked together for so long, and I even produced videos and some of his recordings, but we had never actually recorded together. We'd done gigs. I said, well, man, if we get together, we should record something where I'm playing the drums, you know? And that became a first blues album, which is going to get reissued sometime in the future. Cool Cocktail Vibes was a follow-up in 2008. Due to various things, there was demos made, but it never got released. John passed away rather suddenly. Unfortunately, we were in discussions about finishing it, and he passed away in 2018. So in 2018, that was 10 years, almost 10 years after we'd recorded it, we wanted to release Cool Cocktail Vibes. And back in 2008, here's John talking about the release of this new album.
The new one is going to be called Doc plus Johnny equals Cool Cocktail Vibes. We're almost done recording it, literally 95% recorded. It's going to be 8 tracks, going in some new directions because Doc and I both really love bossa nova. There's a lot of kind of Latin sounding things. We have some excellent guest artists, Jessica Bartlett from Wiki Pickers and Rob Shoemaker from Norman Sylvester Band. And they're going to be really cool graphics, and we're having a ball. And, you know, what we usually do, we kind of hibernate in the winter and do the recording. And then this summer, we hope to be doing more live playing.
We were doing a lot of live playing back then, places like Selwood Park, the Farmers Market. So what I want to do now is kind of get into some of the songs and dig into how they were put together, how we recorded them, and how I produced them. And that's really kind of the idea behind what I'm doing here, to talk about how music is recorded, how music is produced, composed. We got a lot of stuff to talk about in the future, so let's do Cool Cocktail Vibes. Cool Cocktail Vibes begins with Turquoise Drifts, an instrumental that's based on this keyboard riff that I wrote. Very simple, but kind of mysterious. And then just comping on the keyboards in A. There's another section that comes up and we'll talk about that, and a key change. We jammed on that. We had John do some guitar work, and then we added layers and layers of percussion. I'm going to play you a little bit of the demo we had so you can kind of hear what a demo sounds like, or kind of the rough patches, or what we had going. Let's just see what that demo sounded like. We're learning the riff.
Turquoise.
Oh.
Take 2. 1, 2.
Let's get into it here. Guitar chords. So this really just is a demo. This isn't a recording at all. Just a lot of jamming. I think I actually had a extended keyboard solo in that demo, which we ended up not using. I call that kind of pathfinding when you're songwriting. I don't know, that's my term for it, where you're kind of exploring and getting ideas, melody, chords, where you want to go, especially in an improvisational setting. In this case, where you can record it and go back to it and go, I like this bit here, or I like that bit, and you start honing in on the song or the arrangement. Now, not all songs are put together that way. And later down the road, I'll talk about actually getting out pen and paper, writing out songs, that sort of thing. But in this case, it's kind of jazzy. It's kind of improvised. You want it to be fresh. If you're in a band, people come in, they come in with riffs and ideas. And so the person chose the band, you start working on it, and you start working it up. It was digitally recorded on a deck called the Borroz 1600 CD. I was just sort of figuring it out. I'm going to play you a little bit of one of the demo mixes back then of what it sounded like, the tracks, what we were listening to as a demo. It's very rough from a mix standpoint. So how to get into the song with percussion. Now notice you hear a nice hum. Nice, I'm being sarcastic. That's coming off of, I think, John's amplifier or his guitar. So that's going to be a problem when mixing it professionally. So a lot of problems in here. I just wanted you to hear that hum, which is something that I had to deal with. Turquoise Drifts was always intended to be the first opening track on the album. I had a lot of high hopes for it. I think John did too, to kind of present the vibe. There's keyboards, there's bass, there's guitar, but there's a lot of percussion and effects and things like that. When I went to finish it in 2022, I wanted to really get the vibe of how this thing is supposed to open up. And one of the things was I always wanted, John and I had talked about this, kind of like the jungle, kind of like those great Martin Denny, Arthur Lyman, those sound effects to get you in the mood, like you're going in the jungle. This is, this is supposed to be party music, get you in the mood, but we had never put that together at the time. My influence there was Grover Washington Jr. did this album in 1975, which I really love, called Mr. Magic. One of the tunes on there was called Earth Tones. It starts out with all kinds of birds and that sort of thing happening. The other thing too is when I think of like Exotica and tiki culture, my first exposure to that sort of thing was as a little kid. It was still kind of going on back then, but we went to Disneyland, and there's a lot of kids who the first time they ever were exposed to that sort of thing was the Enchanted Tiki Room. And my grandmother and I loved that place, the Enchanted Tiki Room. Tikis come alive and birds sing, and there's birds and everything comes alive in that room. Classic Disney animatronics. And as a kid, I was like, wow, maybe that's why, I got into drumming. I don't know. But my grandma loved it. I loved it. So this was really a tie-in to that. In fact, I'll talk about that in a minute, about the bells. So let's take a listen to, or start out with the intro. Hear the birds. Guitar. Just percussion. Bells. We're kind of hanging in the studio. I'll talk about those tracks in a minute. We just got to get into it. A lot of mystery, which I really like. Timpani roll, cymbal, and there you go. Now you have the keyboard line. So again, you heard the what I call the jungle sounds, and they mix so well with lots of birds. Right. That's not the first time I've worked with special effects. I was commissioned to write a ballet. The theme was about, like, it was an environmental theme. The choreographer was researching things about amphibians. It became all about frogs. So I ended up putting in all these frog sounds at the beginning of the song. I think it's cool. It can be overused, but it also can be really cool. So you hear some bells in there. And this is kind of the tie-in I have with my grandma and going to the Enchanted Tiki Room back in Disneyland. I found a box that was full of bells that my grandmother collected. She loved bells. She loved to collect bells. She was Swiss, and so she liked cowbells, like actual bells that cows would wear. But she collected bells from all over. And as a percussionist, I was like, wow, she really had a great ear for bells. So all of these, I think I have 4 strands of bells here. All of these bells were used in the track, in Turquoise Drifts. And I did record that and the atmosphere, the birds and stuff, in 2022 because of the intention of wanting to have those jungle sounds and everything, and then getting into the regular part of the song. So here's some of the bells I used. These are very quiet. These are these look Asian, maybe Indian. She had another, he's darker. Really nice low tone. And then we get into the Malak bells. She had this long string of bells. She put these strings of bells together herself. This is like someone getting new bells and tying them together. This, I believe, was on her door when you'd open the door. Really kind of angelic mixture of all kinds of different bells. Probably a lot of this from India, I think. But that's great. And then she got this loud, lower tone. This is clearly a set. Really nice low tone. So I was like totally like, oh, what would you hear in the jungle? Or maybe you wouldn't hear it, but this is all magical things, and you've got to bring the magic. Yeah. So I really think that added a lot to getting into the track. And then as far as things that I added, of course, we have to get into that melody, into that riff, the mystery of it, the magic, get into the riff, jamming on the riff. John does guitar solos, we change keys, we do some other special things, and then we get out of it and we go back down into the magic again. And that's kind of the arc of the song, which is I think it's about 7 minutes. I added a timpani and a Chinese cymbal, one I call a Wuhan cymbal, which is, you can't see it, but you see a tree of cymbals over there. It's down in that corner. So there you go. With this project, sometimes John and I would sit down and we'd record the basics, and then we have some mics in our studio. Maybe I'd play some congas and John would play some hand percussion or something like this. So that's what you hear. So these are some shakers back in 2008 that we had. We're just getting in the mood of it, John and I. You hear that? That's John on the bongos there with his fingers. I think. It's me. Can't remember. Yeah, we're just kind of doing this basic. Now, one thing I wanted to do was make sure I was true to the original tracks and not just go in and, re-record everything. No. We still needed to have the spirit of the tune and what was there, warts and all. So sometimes there was that, and either we just left it in or we went with it. And there's the tune again. And of course, this was all extra tracks that I had done after we had the session with John, where I would go in and go, okay, I got to add the guiro, never can pronounce that, shaker, woodblock. I really wanted to give it kind of an Arthur Murray exotic dance, like if you went to one of those ballroom dancing schools, and it's like, well, today we're going to learn the cha-cha-cha or something. That was kind of my idea behind the backbeat. Now these are tracks that were recorded in 2008, so these are original percussion tracks. There was of course, you got to add the triangle. I actually re-recorded that triangle because it was a little too sloppy and busy, and it started to conflict with that. So I went, you know what? I'm going to go in and I'm going to fix up the triangle part. So I did things like that, clean things up, whatnot. But you get that sort of almost like those old home organs that had the beatbox in them, right? Because you'd just be like, and of course, I'm using that type of organ sound. I used this keyboard on this. I always find music for me, especially songs that I write, I have a imagination, an image in my head. The music comes to me almost like a movie. You do hear music, but then as the music's coming through, it's almost like a soundtrack. Landscapes or images, visuals that are going with this music. So for Turquoise Drifts, it was the magic, the jungle. But then what happens with magic? You never know. If you're going through the jungle, if there's good magic, there's going to be, the dark magic there too, right? Our second section came up with this really cool riff, which I can't remember what it was now. And that to me always was like, that's kind of the dark magic. And so we go there. And then of course we got to ease ourselves out of that and get back into the good magic, right? So I'll play you this little transition here. Getting a little bluesy there on the guitar. And you see how things kind of change the mood a little bit. It's like, oh, maybe we encountered an active volcano. You have the bass and the organs going into that. John's still doing his solos and like he gets bluesy in there, but the music, the backing has to change. So we have an additional stop on the organ. Well, for me, when I'd hear this demo, I imagined like people chanting. Maybe the volcano is gonna erupt. I mean, this is real 1940s King Kong or something. I don't know. Kind of the movies. When I worked on this in 2022, I said I gotta have something there that really changes that mood, and I want it to be like a chanting, a choir. So here's what I came up with there. I mean, it sounds a little weird. I layered a few different synths and samples on this, but I liked it because it obviously sounds a little unnatural when you isolate it like that. Certainly it sounds that way, but it gave it still like a, what is that sound, right? So if you hear it in context, we just keep that backbeat on the kick. Bring it back in, just for that drama. Okay, so the next part, we come out of this dark, brooding mystery magic, and we're going to drive into a little bit of a change. The whole thing's in like this A minor. Then we got to do a change, and John takes it up with the bass, and we go into a B flat. Just kind of hang on that. It's pretty funky. So check this out. Things get really frisky in here, you know? Guitar and the percussion. And then the organ just kind of comes down with the bass. It's very simple but effective. It's all rhythm and all vibe, right? And remember, we've come out of that sort of dark place, if you want to call it that. Notice how things are starting to really relax. You go back into some magic. Actually, right there, you can hear, I think that's me. I'm actually going, shh. That's what you heard right there. Some of those live drums that John, that's John playing that. So again, just live mics where John and I were playing percussion. And then here comes my grandmother's bells again. And then there's some kind of cool timpani work. I have this 26-inch timpani, and what I'm doing is I'm hitting it and then tuning it up and tuning it down with the pedal. Very effective kind of a thing. And you'll hear the Chinese cymbal roll again. Last thing you hear is John's guitar almost weeping. Yeah, that's Cool Cocktail Vibes, Turquoise Drifts. I really dig how that one turned out. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to do more of these. If you do want to get Cool Cocktail Vibes, like I said, if you listen to streaming, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, I'm missing several. The list is always long. You can get it on Bandcamp. That's at drnormal.bandcamp.com. You can also order CDs and a few remaining cassette tapes. Very rare. And I don't know if we'll make any more. In the meantime, stay cool. I'll see you next time. Another video. If you like these, let me know. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe.